So good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing? I see not a lot of energy, huh? Okay. All right. So my name is Ricardo Santos. I'm a senior product manager at Commvault, and with me I got Rahul Pawar, who is VP of Product Management. And we're going to talk to you guys quite a bit about Commvault today. Before we do, though, my little girl wants to know what Daddy does for a living. So I'm going to recruit all of you. I'm going to take a selfie. How do you feel about that? Wow, exciting. How about some smiles, everybody? All right, that's done. So, Rahul?
Sure, and thanks a lot, guys, for attending our session. How many of you know or in any form are using Commvault? Okay, thanks a lot. So just want to touch base on Commvault and AWS together. We have been working with AWS quite a bit. We have 6 years as their advanced technology partner. We have several validated solutions working for AWS. And as we go through, our journey starts right from your on-prem, taking the data into AWS using your Snowball, Snowmobile. We have integrations with that. And as we go through, I have a slide where we talk about integration with various instances across regions, availability zones, our solution for various kinds of databases. This is the slide about Commvault. Commvault is a company that was started in AT&T Bell Labs. Over 20 years, we are now a public company. We have been obsessively focused on data backups, data protection, and data management. We allow you to know your data, manage, recover, and use the data right from our backup repository. There are 2 stats. Out of various stats, the number of patents and being a leader, there are 2 stats that I want you to remember. We have, based on the 40% customers that do report into us, a lot of government agencies don't report into us. Based on the 40% of customers that report into us, we have 11 exabytes of data under management, and 700 petabyte is under management in cloud. So I want to talk about the data protection challenges in cloud. And while there are several, I want to highlight the 3 of them. When it comes to cloud and the data protection challenges, there are 3 things that come to mind as a challenge. One is cost, security, and doing the right kind of sizing. So public cloud offers humongous amount of benefits, but these are the 3 challenges that everybody has to go through. As you know, anything that is on-prem, you can keep it on forever without worrying about the cost, but if you have it in cloud, the instance that is running, you're paying money for it. Even if you have it powered off, you're still paying money for it, the fact that you have an instance. So we'll talk about that. So controlling data protection infrastructure cost, what we have done is we have ability to power off our infrastructure when we don't need it. So the media agents, so the machines that do the protection, we power it off when we don't need it. And for an on-demand backup or a restore that is ad off, we will power it on and allow you to recover it. So assuming that the backup window is typically between 8 to 12 hours, that's 50%, or if it's an 8-hour backup window, that's 30% usage only, and that adds up to your saving. We have policy-based plans by which our infrastructure machine do come up. So first of all, if you're backing up from on-prem to cloud, we don't need a cloud instance. We don't need an appliance form factor in cloud. You can write directly from on-prem to cloud to your S3 buckets, and you can do your whole lifecycle management of taking data from S3 to Glacier to Deep Archive. Commvault was a Deep Archive launch partner. So you could do the storage tiering without requiring an instance in cloud. And when you need to use the data in cloud, you can bring up the Commvault instance in cloud, access the data, and after you're done accessing, you can power off and even delete the instance that is in cloud. That all adds up to your saving. And what I mean by policy-based engine is for our backup and restore, we allow you to define a policy. So depending on your backup window and the amount of instances that we have to protect in cloud, we will have our infrastructure machines come up and multiply. So for that amount of time, there's more than 1, 4, 5 media agents that are actually hauling in all the data, making sure your backup window is met. And as the backup completes, we start deleting them, powering off and start deleting them. That way, you're not paying money for even the powered off instance. The same thing happens for recovery. When you have a DR need, all your on-prem data that is sitting on-prem, and you have a S3 copy, when you have a DR to test, our policy engine will kick in, will bring up to whatever numbers you have configured, media agents that will restore the VMs, or the instances. They are all firewalled, so your production environment is untouched. And we can bring them up in the boot order that you have, the DR runbook that you have defined. And after the DR test is done, you could completely delete the whole infrastructure. You go back to paying the S3 storage costs. And all of our data is always deduplicated and encrypted right from the on-prem client or even in cloud. So even on S3, based on the deduplications you have, you're only paying for the cost of the deduplicated data. And because it is in Commvault proprietary format, deduped and encrypted, even if somebody gets access to your S3 buckets, your data is always safe. So the DR readiness that I was talking about, we have a university hospital. What they have done is they have their infrastructure on-prem in VMware. From VMware, they do a backup, and the primary copy sits on-prem. Their secondary copy is in S3. And we will do every quarter a test where we bring up their 400 instances or 400 machines. We recover all of them under 4 hours using various faster read APIs and deploying various agents. We do the DR runbook test, and we delete all of that. So we have the numbers of the tests done. Roughly $25 for 100 VMs that come up for an hour. So if you're doing that, you could do the math, and you could get rid, at least this university got rid of their whole secondary data center using cloud as the go-to thing. And we have retention tiering that can be defined. That way, you could take your data only first 30 days or 14 days can stay on-prem, where the needs are most. The remaining data can sit in S3, and within S3, it could go into Glacier and Deep Archive. We have integration with the various lock models. So if you have compliance needs, write-only media, all those integration is already done by Commvault. And when we keep data within S3, various layers, the thing that we have done is we keep the metadata that is needed in the top tier. So when we are doing a search and bringing up a VM or bringing up a database or certain set of files, we already know which Deep Archive or Glacier records we're pulling through. So because we have the metadata, the data that we are recovering, we already know the blocks that we are bringing in. So sizing consideration now, this is where it gets tricky. What you want to do on VMware instances or things on-prem, you want to look forward and plan for 3 years. So the server that you're getting right now, you want to make sure that you're right-sizing the server for the next year or at least 3 years until the hardware contract is there. Versus in cloud, when you're going, our suggestion is to start small, and as the workload grows, don't plan for 3 years ahead of time. Otherwise, you're paying for a very, very costly instance. As the workload grows, as the need arises, feel free to use the cloud agility and add the needed CPU, add the needed disks on the run. Talking about the security, we support IAM security. We allow your data to be moved cross accounts as needed. We have integration with AWS key management. We also support your own key managements that you can bring in. So, and our security granularity works. So you could define the security at a set of VMs or a set of instances, and we carry it through at various levels. So depending on your Exchange admins or Oracle admins, you could define the security, and based on who's in that group, they'll automatically get access to it. Now, further down, our policies allow you to define what a user can or cannot do. So if you have developers that are doing clones of your databases for testing purposes, you could define how many clones they can do. You can allow them to do 5 or 3 clones, and how and when they expire. Even doing a file recovery, you could define who can do a file recovery, whether it is done in place, out of place, and we check the credentials against what the user has permissions for today and allow them to recover accordingly.
So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about some of the processes that we take to protect your EC2 instances, right? So we have something that we refer to as our virtual server agent. And what this is basically the top-level cloud API integration that allows us to get all the different bits that we need to protect your instances, right? So this, of course, is going to be your AMI images. We're going to collect the information on memory and CPU, et cetera. And once we have that, then our process is one that really involves snapshotting. Now, it is likely that some of you may have heard that the only way to do this is using a VM virtualization style method. Well, I'm going to say this is one way to protect EC2 instances running in AWS, right? So contrary to what some folks have been saying, perfectly fine to still use in-guest agent. Nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, what I would say is that you really should be treating your instances based on the needs of the instance, right? So for the purposes of this slide, yes, we're talking about this type of approach. But really, it's about flexibility, right? So Commvault offers this agentless protection solution. Agent's still viable. And there's one additional thing that we do that is also uniquely Commvault, right? And that is something we call IntelliSnap, right? So what you see on the screen is basically, our methodology. We protect a VM. We grab that metadata. We call on a snapshot. We mount that snapshot. And then we protect that data. With this IntelliSnap thing, we take it one step further. We actually manage the life cycle of the snapshot, right? So we can control that not only on this one region, but we can leverage replication and control it across different regions, right? An additional part of this IntelliSnap process is that it also allows us to, if you need to go in and grab a quick file from that snapshot, we can access it that way, right? So rather than going to some storage repository out there and then bringing it from a slower tier storage, it's right there for us, right? We can access it right away. Additionally, with this virtualization method, with this cloud level method, we're doing a VM backup, but we give you a whole bunch of granular restore capabilities, right? So depending on what type of VM you're running, both application consistency and application granularity could be important here, right? So this is something we support. We refer to this as app-aware. And this is really more for the, the traditional workloads that you got running, the SQLs, the exchanges, the SharePoints, et cetera. Before the backup occurs, before this snapshot occurs, we bring those things into a consistent state, right? So that when the instance comes back, it is, those databases are running and operational. But it has that additional benefit where if you just want to take out, I don't know, something from a table space, from the VM backup, you get that granular restore, right? One last quick item on this. This is all policy driven, right? So the way you configure this is you very simply go in and you set your auto discovery rules. These rules can be very simple, can be very complex. You can go in and say, manually select your VM instances, or you can go all the way up and say, I want the entire region, or you support tags, naming convention. You set it once, and then if somebody in the middle of the night provisions 10 VMs without you knowing it, it's okay. If it falls within that criteria, we're going to protect it. All right? We fully support Amazon RDS instances. Right? So the interesting thing about this is that while we can go in and using that same snapshot methodology that I described for you guys, right, we're managing the volume snapshots, we can manage that replication, move these things across different regions. There's additional use cases that have sort of presented themselves here for us, right? So, most of the available RDSs are within our support matrix. But what we found is that, you may want to be moving these things around, right? So using our regular traditional agents where you might have had, a SQL database or Oracle running on-prem, you can actually do that backup. We'll convert that for you on the fly, and then we'll restore it in the cloud for you, right, as an RDS, right? And of course, we can also reverse this process for you, right? So fully supported, protect, but additionally, as a secondary use case, we can also migrate your databases. Moving on from VM instances, one of the things that we also support is the Amazon storage, right? So we support both S3 and EFS file shares. Now, this is done via an agent, right? So basically, you might have a whole bunch of objects. You might have data where you don't really know exactly what it is. You need to protect it. In fact, I was having a conversation on the show floor where somebody came to me and said, Ricardo, I got this stuff. It's some application that I don't really know what it is. And what do I do with it? Well, as an advantage of it being protected, you also get to figure out what you have, right? It's very common that we get these requests where folks come to us and say, what do we have? I don't know, right? So we can protect both those types. It can go from stuff that you have in S3 to another S3 bucket, and even in a different region. But the advantage of doing this, through that process of us protecting it and getting to know what's there, you can then actually do stuff with it. So when it comes to restore, all right, you can put it back where you originally found it, but you can now take that object and restore it to both either a Linux file system or a Windows operating system, right? So you can, from this, blob of stuff, take out just that one little item and put it to use for yourselves. How do you do some of these operations? So what we do is, and I hate to use this term, but it's the best way to describe it. We do offer you a single pane of glass. I'm sure you've heard this before, right? So it is basically a very, very flexible, very customizable interface. And this interface will provide you all the reporting, all the auditing, very, very robust alerting. But because you have such flexibility with it, you can then configure it so that your administrators will have, admin rights, God rights. They can configure all your policies. They can configure all your storage repositories, all the different levels of tiering. But for your end users, maybe you only want them to restore the instances that they own. Maybe they're DBAs, and you only want to have them access to those database boxes. And you can even get very granular where you can say maybe they can restore VMs or just files, right? So a ton of flexibility on how you configure these things. Let me go back to you.
I kind of touched a little bit about this when I started out. So when you're planning for cloud, plan for right now. Don't plan for 3 years or 4 years ahead. And you can always size the infrastructure right. For Commvault, your infrastructure you can plan before deploying it. And we power off our own infrastructure. Take advantage of the elasticity that is available to you in the cloud so that you could scale as needed. Use cloud for its agility. Use cloud for being able to keep the storage in a very, very cheap tier. Use cloud for all your DR testings that you really quickly want to do. Take it across regions and test your applications. Boot test all the DR instances like that. So we support the migration using the AWS Snowball and Snowmobile. So use that for doing the data transfer from on-prem to cloud. And followed by that, we do only incremental change block transfer over. So we support compression, encryption, and deduplication. Using that, all you're sending over across is the change-only blocks. You can take your VMware instances and have a hot live copy sitting in AWS instances. And we support that in 3 variations. Variation number 1 is you could keep your AWS instance as a fully populated instance, which is powered off. At this point in time, the time required for your instance to come up is the time required for the machine to get powered on. And you could do it as frequently as you want. You could do 15 minutes, and we will do the conversion from your VMware VMs or even your physical machines and keep an AWS instance ready in cloud. The second option is, instead of keeping a fully populated instance, we can do the conversion from VMDKs, and we will keep EBS volumes ready to go. So you don't have an EC2 instance, but you have the volumes. In this case, you're paying for a volume, which is not an S3 volume, an EBS volume, and at the time of your DR or failover, we will create the instance and attach these volumes that are already present, and we will boot out of that. Here, you're saving on the instance cost, but you're paying in non-deduplicated, pre-created volumes. Again, it's a cost-saving option. The third option is you keep the data in S3, and as you need, you stand out the infrastructure and bring it over. So based on the applications that you have, tier 1, 2, 3, you could use either or and keep the change blocks being transferred and in cloud and recover out of that. So these are the various services that we have supported for storage tier. And this is a whole image of what all is supported. You can start on-prem, and on-prem you have your disk pool, and you could use your Snowball devices to move the data to cloud. Now, once you go to cloud, you could use various S3 layers, which are automatically tiered using Commvault software. So you could keep your first 30 days or 60 days in S3 tier, then it can move to S3i, Glacier, and Deep Archive. In all of this, when you are recovering, you could use our Cloud Burst, which is a set of media agents that come up and bring up all your infrastructure at that point in time. Same thing applies for RDS, same thing applies for various applications. As Ricardo was saying, when you are moving from Oracle, we can actually convert from Oracle Enterprise mode sitting on AIX, Big Indian, to Oracle on Linux, Little Indian. Key takeaways.
You got it.
Okay. Think about data access and the security policy that you're going to define early. For DR, test and validate your approach, and schedule operation windows to leverage the power management features that Commvault has. Any questions? We are also available to do it offline, or we are at booth 2413.
Yep.
If you want to talk there, please fill out the survey on your mobile app about this session, and hope it introduced Commvault to you guys.
Yep. One last thing. So Rahul had 2 sessions already, and he's going to be doing a third one about the recent announcement about readdiff being introduced. So once this is available, of course, Commvault will also be leveraging this as well.
Okay. That's the EBS Snap API that AWS just launched today. And we are the launch partners with them, and we are talking about how the new Snap EBS direct read, how it is saving. And we had a test done. An incremental that typically takes 20 minutes because we have to do a full read. Now, with the new changes, it's taking only 3 minutes. And this was done for 100 gig in AWS East region. But you could quickly see, typically the instances are 1 terabyte. And they don't require now an EC2 instance to mount that particular volume to. So we are able to directly read out of the snap. We are able to do reads in parallel and get change blocks or data-only blocks. With that in picture, if you take hundreds of instances or thousands instances for certain customers under management, the savings are 1000x. And it's the saving in time as well as the saving in how the need of a dedicated EC2 instance. So I'm talking about that. There's a third session on Thursday, if you want to listen to that, the EBS Snap API announcement. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I forget your